Broadcasting live from base camp on the plain of Zendikar, this is Tap Tap Concede. Welcome everybody to Tap Tap Concede. I'm Graham. With me here is Nelson.
Hi there.
And Cameron.
Hello.
And we're going to be talking about all the Zendikards, our initial impressions of Zendikar and playing it at the pre-release, and we're going to start by cracking a booster. But before that, a reminder that the show is brought to you by Card Kingdom. Do check out cardkingdom.com/LRR for all of your card needs. And you can tell them, loading ready run sent me, button please, and they will give you a little 1-inch button. The button right now is still putting the woo in Wooburg.
Woo!
And of course, this show and everything we do is brought to you by you and your kind support of our Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun.
You!
Woo indeed. So let's start by cracking a pack. Now I have 2 of 3 kinds of booster pack in front of me. Which one of these did we want to open?
Which is the appropriate tapas to begin our booster pack meal?
Yeah. I guess if we're going to be talking about playing limited in the PPR, probably just a draft booster?
Yeah, I'm down for a regular booster.
Yeah, that sounds reasonable.
All right. Or, I mean, I don't know. Maybe we open both of them. I was actually just down at Yellow Jacket at our local game store. I got these from Yellow Jacket because Jeremy Petter and I went down there to get maximum value, because if you go in and get a pre-release kit, you get an extra draft booster and an extra set booster, because WotC really wants people to come into the LGSs and support them. And if you bring a friend between you, you get a further extra draft booster.
Whoa.
Which we flipped for and I won. So,
Jeez.
yeah. And so we were talking about the various kinds of booster packs and how, I mean, Ed's managing, but he's just like, what is this? He has to keep catching himself when he's like, well, you just grab a booster. I mean, you grab a draft boost. Okay, so there's draft boosters and set boosters. The collector boosters aren't available yet for Zendikar Rising because, of course, the set isn't technically out.
But it's so funny because it doesn't mean anything anymore, right? Because you can pick up a booster box now, which used to be the difference between whether the set was out, and now it's just like the set's out for 3 days, and then it's not for 4 days, and then it is again.
Yeah, there was someone sitting at one of the tables just cracking an entire booster box. It felt like old times, except that everyone was wearing masks. So, in this booster pack, which is backwards oriented, that's interesting. Okay, well, I'll start with the commons anyway. We have Makindi Ox. So 4 and a white for a 4/4 Ox with landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, tap target creature and opponent controls. If it matters, I got the showcase frame on this one, and it looks real cool.
I mean, this should be good, right?
It is. I've only played against it on Magic Arena so far, and it's been super irritating every time.
Yeah, this seems just as good to me. Like, my initial impression is it's as good as that stag that just taps something when it attacks, a 3/3 for 4.
Yeah, because it's like usually this ability is stapled to a creature attacking. But in this case, it lets you do it without putting the Ox itself into combat. It doesn't mean you can do it every turn, only turns you hit land, but that's many different turns in limited. And yeah, I think Makindi Ox is pretty great. Also, it's a 4/4.
That's right. And
yeah, that's not inconsiderable.
Various colors too in this environment will give you the opportunity to play multiple lands a turn.
Risen Riptide is next, 2 and a blue for a 0/5 elemental. Whenever you cast a kicked spell, Risen Riptide has base power and toughness 5/5 until end of turn.
I have not played this deck yet.
Yeah, it's a common.
Yep. Adam and I played Zendikar Draft on Magic Online yesterday on stream because Arena's servers were buckling under the pressure of hype. And we had a turn where our opponent attacked in with a Kali and some other 3/3, and we cast a kicked into the royal, bouncing the other 3/3, drawing a card off into the royal kick, and then blocking a Kali with Risen Riptide. And that was a good turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that feels really good. Like, kicking into the royal feels good in a normal game.
Yeah.
But also having it be like +5/+0 to something. Yeah, all right.
Then when they let you lock in blocks, you thought, everything in my life has led up to this moment.
I mean, this will work well in sort of Simic kick spells because there's a lot of synergy there. But for us, it was in just red-blue spells. We had the Umara Mystic, which is like a Wee Dragonauts that triggers off instants and sorceries, but also wizards.
Yeah, those two extra words are real important to the wizard stack. Like I remember, forcing wizards quite a lot in Dominaria, and sometimes it just didn't work because the ratios were off. But getting the buff,
Or you just draw the wrong half, right?
yeah, draw the wrong half of your deck. But like the getting the buff off wizard creatures, very elegant solution to that problem. I like it a lot.
Yeah, the vast majority of our deck actually pumped the Mystics, but being able to sit back on Risen Riptide, because the nice thing about Risen Riptide is you always block, right? Like they attack with a 3/3 and you always block. And so they're not necessarily always expecting you to actually have instant speed kick. And then one of these turns, you do it and you just get to eat their creature basically for free. There's a blue common that's like a slightly worse in some situations dive down because it's 1 blue mana for +0/+3, and then kick to get the hexproof, but the kick is only 1, so it's really cheap.
Right, right. Oh, I forget the name of it, and it's not in the deck that I have open. But yeah, I know the one you mean.
Yeah. Anyway, next.
Shield spell. Sorry, shell shield.
Ah, yes, Shell Shield.
That's hard. Why is that so hard to say? Anyways, shell shield.
Shell Shield.
And you've described it already. Yeah.
Yeah. Next is Nahiri's Binding, 1 white for an enchantment. Enchant creature or planeswalker, and it can't attack or block or have its activated abilities be activated. I said that in a weird way, but you get the idea. Anyway, yes, please. Arrest for planeswalkers also. Sounds great.
Solid card. A+.
Tazim Royal Mage. It's a 2/1 Merfolk Wizard for 1 and a blue. And you can kick it for 4 generic mana. And if you do that, you get an instant or sorcery back from your graveyard to your hand.
Yeah.
Seems fine.
Yeah. I mean, getting it into the royal back feels good.
Earlier on, you get wizard value, and then
A piker.
it's a piker, and then later you get. It's like there's like a 2/2 for 5 that was just in a core set that did this sort of Archaeomancer kind of ability.
Archaeomancer's been a bunch of different cards. So like the very first Archaeomancer I think was actually Is It, not Guild Mage, but another kind of Is It card. Before that there had been a 5-drop that did a
Scrivener.
Yeah, so Scrivener, I was just gonna mention, like there was a 5-drop in red and a 5-drop in blue, and each one could get back one type but not both, and then they made one that was a 5 mana 2/2 for a red, a blue, and 3 generic in like Guild Pact, like the first set where the Is It Guild was shown off. And then after that, they made Archaeomancer and Mnemonic Wall. They're like, well, okay, this ability doesn't need to be so hard to get. And now they've given us a bunch of different flexible options. I believe recently the ability was stapled to a 3/3 Prowess for 5. I can't remember which set that was, possibly M21?
Yeah, it was in core.
Yeah.
Because, Ben Wheeler dumpstered us in the Build-A-Box Commander game with that and Sublime Epiphany.
Right. Oh, wow. Yeah, that's gross.
It was like the old Eternal Mystic.
The hard lock. Yeah. Medium hard lock here with just casting the spell every turn. Brutal. But yeah, that one, like, it's funny to see the track of like the sort of kind of irrelevant power creep, but we used to have a 2/2 for 5, and now we have a 3/3 Prowess for the same mana. So
next we have Gnarlid Colony. I like this because we talked a couple episodes ago about how it felt from the initial impressions. It felt like it looked like Zendikar Rising was meant to sort of feel more like the sequel that people wanted from Zendikar more than Battle for Zendikar ended up being. And the first block had Gnarlid Pack, which was actually from Worldwake because it had multi-kicker, but they had the Gnarlid Pack. And then in Battle for Zendikar, there was just the Aura Gnarlid, which didn't mechanically have the same kind of feel, but Gnarlid Colony sure does. It's 1 and a green for a 2/2 beast, but you can kick it for 2 and a green, and if you kick it, it has 2 +1/+1 counters, so it's a 2/2 for 2 or a 4/4 for 5, and also says each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has trample.
The ability lords keep creeping lower and lower in rarity. Hey, I mean, this used to always be something that you would see on an uncommon, and like I want to say earlier in Magic's history, if any of your cards said like each other creature you control, boom, rare right away. Like each other zombie you control gains 1 black, regenerates. Like, okay, cool, thanks. It's like, oh, this is my rare. Okay. And now it's like Gnarlid Colony, just a common, and like, perfectly good value you get out of your bear if you already have +1/+1 counters and need to attack.
Yeah.
Like, were the Dark Ascension Lords kind of the first uncommon versions of those that we saw?
Yeah, I think so, because I can remember those selling like hotcakes. Like those.
Oh, like Drogskull Captain and stuff like that. Yeah,
and Stromkirk Captain and Immerwolf. They all felt like rares at the time. I remember. It's like, oh, this is like the kind of thing you usually see in a rare slot, but it's just uncommon. So those were good.
Next is Disenchant, because sometimes you just need a Disenchant. It's 1 and a white for an instant, destroy target artifact or enchantment.
Yep.
Sure is. Malakir Blood Priest is next, and I would swear that they'd already printed a card named Malakir Blood Priest, but they haven't. This is 1 and a black for a 2/1 Vampire Cleric, and when it enters the battlefield, each opponent loses X life, and you gain X life, where X is the number of creatures in your party.
This one's not bad.
No, it's not. I've found...
Did some things to the PPR, right?
Yeah, I've found getting a party together is, like, not that much of a challenge, by which I mean, like, getting all 4, that's certainly less likely, but you like 2 is pretty easily doable, and then you just sort of get medium incremental value from a bunch of cards.
Yeah, like I don't hate this guy on 2.
Like Viashino Pyromancer is still just a regularly played card in mono red aggro historic burn, and was like just played all the way through its standard environment. And if this just said 2 on it, you have a slightly better Viashino Pyromancer, albeit it doesn't turn on your Wizard's Retort, but this guy can say 3 or 4 sometimes. So,
and you know what's going to help you get to that party is our next card, the Stonework Pack Beast, which I kind of like this as a throwback to Stonework Puma, which was a colorless artifact creature that was an ally that helped the original Zendikar block, helped you like hit your critical mass of allies. But this is, I think, because that was a 2/2 for 3, I want to say, and this is just a piker. This is a 2/1 for 2 colorless, but it's also a cleric, rogue, warrior, and wizard.
Oh, nice! It's kind of like taking the place of the generic ally.
Yeah,
that's cute.
Yeah.
That's a cool throwback, sort of sideways.
It also has the bad mana fixing from Prismite, so 2 mana to add any 1 mana of any color.
Good for you, Prismite. You grew up and had another ability that people are going to care about.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like this guy's just a party crowd pleaser, right?
Yeah.
Hey, don't worry, everyone. I've got levels in it.
Hey, the Pack Beast is here. All right, let's have snacks.
Next is Vanquish the Weak. 2 and a black for an instant. Destroy target creature with power 3 or less.
That's a reprint, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been reprinted a couple times.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
Next is Molten Blast. It's 2 and a red for an instant. Choose 1. Molten Blast deals 2 damage to target creature or planeswalker, or destroy target artifact. They're finally going to get me to main board red artifact destruction.
Yeah, like bad abrade, I guess this is what life is. Sometimes you get the power creep, and sometimes the power creeps you. Wait, does that even make sense?
I mean, this is a common, and it can hit a planeswalker, I guess. But
I guess
otherwise hard to agree with you, Cameron.
Like, I guess sometimes you pay 3 for shock.
Yeah.
The red burn spells in this set are all kind of restrictive. Like there's the Molten Blast, there's the, I don't remember the name of it, but it's 1 and a red to deal 4 damage to a blocking creature, which is interesting to see some of that sort of combat restriction that's often in white creep into red. And then Royal Eruption, which is a sorcery speed lightning strike, but you can kick it for 5 to make it a 7 mana lava axe.
Yeah, I'm not on board with the red burn spells in this set, but
that's good because so much of this set is about creatures, and if the red burn spells were too good, you wouldn't get to do stuff.
Very true.
Red has some other things going on in this set, I think, that aim to redeem it.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Next is our first uncommon, Thwart the Grave. I said that kind of weird. Thwart. 4. Now I'm just looking at the word and I'm like,
it's like a legendary creature. It's like the Grave Thwart, keeper of the bridge.
Thwart, the Grave.
Mm-hmm.
I am Thwart the Grave.
Thwart. Boggart ante.
Yeah, exactly. Creature, oof.
Yeah.
Okay, 4 black for a sorcery, but it costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. So I would say this is consistently going to be like 5 mana, generally speaking. I think that certainly in black, you tend to have at least 1 party creature in play. But maybe you don't, and it costs 6. Return target creature card and up to 1 cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard from your graveyard to the battlefield.
Love it. Love it. I've been playing this in my sealed pools on Arena, and, it's not just the art. Shout out to Wiley Beckert.
Yeah,
that
wow.
is great art.
Great art. But love this card. Especially...
I did not read the first time I read this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's nothing saying that first creature can't also be one of those things.
Yeah, like returning a couple of Malakir Blood Priests to this
Ooh.
can end a conversation pretty quickly.
I hadn't thought of that. That's good.
Yeah, like it's just a good card. I like it a lot.
Speaking of potential conversation enders, we have Allied Assault, 2 and a white for an instant. Up to 2 target creatures each get +X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures in your party.
Yeah, I like this one too.
Yeah, I found this to be pretty successful in a primarily white party down kind of deck.
You probably only want 1 in your deck.
Yeah, I agree with that.
They can end games for sure.
Next is Skyclave Cleric. So it's 1 and a white for a 1/3 core cleric. When it enters the battlefield, you gain 2 life, which is pretty unexciting. It is a double face modal card, and the back is the Skyclave Basilica, which enters tapped and taps for white. So I've been enjoying these modal cards in my sealed pool. So apart from the pre-release, I've played 2 sealed events on Arena, and I think LSV figures that the modal DFCs count as like 2/3 of a land. So if I have 2, I go down a land, and I had instances where it's like, here's your opening hand. You have a plains and these 2 DFCs and a bunch of white spells, because both my DFCs in that game were white. And I'm like, great, that's a keep. I don't need these spells right now. Now, funnily enough, that deck also had 2 of, I want to say it's the Tazim Raptor, which is a 2/2 for 2 and a white. So it's just a Windrake because it has flying. But when it ETBs, you may return a land you control to your hand. So late in the game, I was like, cool, I'll play this Windrake, and then I will return this land to my hand, and now it's a spell. And it was like the protection from like Sajiri seclusion or whatever it's called. And so it's like, sure, my opponent now knows I have this, so it's not going to be like a surprise, but it means that like later in the game I get to actually use it as a spell. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, I really like those bounce a land cards for exactly that reason.
Now, Skyclave Cleric as a creature is like pretty damn unexciting. If you really need clerics, and there is a cleric deck, but if you really need clerics, I guess you have this. But I mean, I guess the advantage to taking this is that you just get to have more spells, right? If you just have like a whole ton of the modal cards, then it's like you can just play fewer land.
Yeah, and like playing a Skyclave Cleric into a Cleric of Life Spawned, the Orzhov Uncommon, it's not the worst feeling in the world, right? Like if you're on the Cleric deck, fine, this guy is better than a vanilla Cleric.
Yeah.
It will do a thing.
Our land is a lovely looking forest, and we have a checklist card for the modal DFCs, and our rare is in fact a mythic that I'm going to need a moment to figure out the wording. So it's Scourge of the Skyclaves, 1 and a black for a star demon. When you cast this spell, if it was kicked, each player loses half their life rounded up. The kicker is 4 and a black. So that's 5 black to cast this kicked. Scourge of the Skyclaves' power and toughness are each equal to 20 minus the highest life total among players.
Yeah, I mean it's what was this guy called? Life Shadow?
Death Shadow.
Death Shadow, but with a playable in Commander motto, right? Like now playable in Commander with that kicker.
The kicker is real, I think, in Commander. The other exciting thing you can do in Commander is if you have Nethroy as your general, or you just have Nethroi, and then you get the mutate trigger off Nethroi. This ability is characteristic defining, so it works in the graveyard, and it goes into the negatives in the graveyard. So then you add up to 10, and you can just get like a big pile of creatures back from your graveyard with Nethroi, because Nethroi wants you to have 10 power worth of creatures, I think. Hopefully I'm quoting this right. There's some sort of con. I might have the card wrong, but there's a way to you use Scourge of the Skyclaves to pull off like this big, mass reanimate out of your own yard.
Wait, so it will actually count? It will give you bonus Nethroi
Yeah,
value.
so negative numbers do actually happen in Magic. It's just that people tend to think that like things round up to 0 because creatures don't deal negative damage. So like most of the time that you have a negative number, it is a creature's power or toughness. And like you never think about a negative toughness because you just put that creature in the graveyard the next time you get priority, and that's correct. You do that as soon as it's 0 or less. But if something needed to care about it, it does see like, oh yeah, that creature has -4 power, right? Like if you're trying to save your creature with a giant growth, you can't. It's not just any amount of toughness, because if it gets -4/-4 from a Grasp of Darkness, and it was a 1/1, you know that a giant growth won't save it, right? There's no time to sneak in there. But anyways, so Scourge of the Skyclaves, because it's characteristic defining, the star, the creature actually does have that, whatever the number is, like inside of your library, I think even.
That is kind of wild.
Wow.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
So cool, rare. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the pack. So, I mean, we sort of gone into it a little bit, but, how have you found the format so far from what you've played?
I found it very fast sometimes. Like the Skyclave Geopede is, that thing hits hard, right? Like Plated Geopede was an all-star from the original Zendikar brain.
Zendikar.
Come back to me, baby.
You could take that all again if you want.
No, Jordan, leave this in. This is fine.
Yeah.
Skyclave Geopede is just a house at 3 in the red deck. It comes down and starts hammering you for 5, right? Especially with the equipment, the flying equipment, the kite.
Oh yeah, the new kite sail that gives you the first equip for free?
Yeah, when that comes down on turn 1, you are probably in for a short game, one way or another.
Yeah, I remember comfortably paying 2 mana and 2 to equip for, I believe it was just called Kite Sail back in Worldwake. And that was because oftentimes games would get pretty mucked up on the ground, and flying was sort of a rare commodity, but this one just gives you that first equip for free. It's so much less mana.
Yeah, and like the skies here are not terribly crowded. The blue-black deck likes having its little homies in the sky, but they are small. And if the landfall deck starts growing wings, you're in trouble. You're in deep trouble, right? Like when the counter-bearing creatures start flying, no, don't like it. Don't care for it one little bit.
Generally speaking, I've found the counter creatures, of which there are many, very strong. The 2/1 cat with trample, the 2/3, I think it might also be a cat in white.
It's also a cat with vigilance.
Yeah, with vigilance. Even there's a 1/1. It's like it's a dumb little idiot baby bird. It's a 1/1 for 1 and a white, and landfall puts a counter on it, and it gains flying until end of turn. That thing gets out of hand.
Oh, that's wild. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, especially with, as we established earlier, Gnarlid Colony at common, giving things with +1/+1 counters trample, right? Like it doesn't need to be kicked to have that ability.
Mm-hmm.
The counter stack feels very real. And like my current sealed deck in on Arena right now is the Rogue deck, and I have had some real nail biters with this one. Notably, a mirror match where both players went turn 1 Ruin Grab.
Oh no.
That was oof. Yeah, that was a squeaker, which I emerged victorious from, I would like to point out. But
congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. That was...
Man, the Rogue deck is amazing, and I hate it. Like, it's so good. It works really well, and there's so much synergy, and the synergy is really good, and it all just like works together really, really well, and it just tilts me off my chair.
Yeah, like if you get the uncommon, the Soaring Thought Thief, that card is real. The deck comes together and it can close out games pretty quickly. And then it also has the backup mill plan, usually, right? Like you can't always guarantee a Ruin Crab, but also at uncommon, there's Merfolk Windrobber that mills a card whenever it attacks. Or, sorry, no, not when it attacks, when it deals damage. So it actually has to connect. But it has flying, and the skies can be pretty open.
Yeah, I had an opponent go turn 1. I think it's that one you're talking about, the Flying Man. It's the 1/1 for a blue with flying that when it hits you, you mill 1.
Yes.
And then turn 2, they played the blue-black 1/3.
Uh-oh.
So they attacked, milled me for 2, hit me, milled me for 1, and then next turn they attacked with both of them. It was just like I'm just sitting there watching all of my cards go flying into the bin.
Yeah, and also your life total's going down, right? Like it's a very proactive deck that attacks across multiple axes, both of which win the game. So I feel it's kind of interesting. Also, the blue-red deck, the wizard deck, really impresses me. I know I mentioned this earlier, but the addition of or wizard to the instant or sorcery buff clause on those cards has really increased the power level across the deck. Because, as Nelson mentioned earlier, in Dominaria, the wizard deck had the problem where you could just draw the wrong half of your deck, right? Where all you're doing is kind of like playing ops that are supposed to be giant growths and never finding your Adelies, right? Now you can cut a lot of like the marginal instants or sorceries that you were playing to make your creatures good and just play more decent creatures. In the pre-release, I was on the warrior deck, and that is just another good aggressive Boros deck, right? The equipment in this set typically attaches when it hits the battlefield, so you need to take way fewer turns off suiting up your homies, and that just contributes to this very like aggressive, lean feel to this environment that I like quite a lot.
Did you have an Akiri in your pre-release deck as well?
I did.
Yeah.
So they were all drawing cards.
And you can kind of protect them, right?
Yes. Yeah, you can give them indestructible by unequipping things. Interestingly enough, the warrior deck felt like the old Dominaria wizard deck on occasion, because sometimes you drew all of your equipment, or sometimes you didn't see your equipment at all. Luckily, these are just aggressive Boros warrior cards anyways that rumble quite happily, whether or not they have a trusty machete analog to strap on.
We didn't win every game that we played, but the deck that Adam and I drafted with the 2 Umara Mystics, which granted the second one came by very late. We basically first picked one and we're just like, we're forcing Izzet, let's go. And that deck was a lot of fun. There's a lot of really entertaining wizard synergies with that deck. And like you get the wizard synergies and you get some amount of whenever you kick a card synergies. And that was super fun, though I imagine it's going to be one of the harder ones to put together, since it's once again it's one of those things where it's like all the cards that go into that deck are just good generally elsewhere, and so everyone's going to take them. Like there's it's a 2/2 flyer for 2 and a blue that whenever you cast an instant, sorcery, or wizard, you get to loot.
Oh,
yeah, it's just called Wind Rider Wizard, which kind of sounds like its name is Flying Wizard.
Yeah,
and its occupation is Flying Wizard.
And this was our opponent at one point had that card, and then another card that whenever you cast a kicked spell, you get to loot. And so when they cast a kicked, I can't remember what the spell is, but it's the divination. So it's 2 and a blue for draw 2 cards, and then you can kick it for another 2 and a blue to draw a third card.
It is. I have it in my pool. I'm just looking for it right now.
Field Research?
Yes. Thank you. So when they cast a kicked Field Research, they got to loot because it was a kicked spell, and then loot because it was a sorcery, and then draw 3 cards.
Sounds like fun.
I'm sure it was for them.
Would you rather win the game or do this? Like if you had to choose, right? You know, and then you just see control players, the meme with all the Uno cards, right?
Joke's on you, Nelson. They got to do both.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and like that feels like a real good time for the Izzet deck, because I want to say that Wizards getting what they want in the worst possible way feels correct when they run into the Dimir mill deck, right? Like I feel a Dimir player seeing someone mill twice and then draw 3 cards is like, oh, please do that again, right?
Yeah, just go ahead and burn through 6 of your cards this turn. I'll wait.
And then I'm just going to put this island into play. Mill 3. Moo-hoo-ha.
Decent. Good old Ruin Crab. Hedron Crab still just winning games sometimes on Zendikar. I like it when there's an aggro deck that's solid and or like it feels like a fairly aggressive format, and you know, attacking with creatures is good. Like that Magic, I think Limited should always feel like that, but particularly formats where it seems like, oh yeah, landfall +1/+1 counters and like various lots of attacking stuff. But then there's a good enough mill deck that's also a factor. So you have to kind of like, you know, keep that in mind or be aware of it, that you might want to pivot into it when you're drafting if it turns out your neighbor's fighting over the equipment with you or whatever. So it's cool to see a mill deck that's in like a good spot like that. I've basically, I think I've drafted less since that whole Throne of Eldraine arena debacle. I mean, partly it's the pandemic and I prefer drafting in paper, but yeah, it's like the mill deck being in the right spot is good. When everyone's just fighting for the mill deck and the mill deck is on top, you know, that really kind of crushes a format where you're like, oh, this clearly isn't what everyone had in mind, and I'm not always seeing how the creatures interact. So I do want
either you get half of it and it does nothing, or you're up against it and you get to watch all of your good cards go away.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of being able to play with them.
Yeah, I really like it when drafting mill is fun and not like the competitive thing to do and like where you're supposed to be. Yeah. How about you, Graham? Favorite memories from the pre-release?
I had one game where my deck really cooked off, but apart from that, my pre-release for like my games was, you know, maybe not my finest outing, but I still had fun. Obviously, I've been enjoying it more playing since then.
I don't have any correct fixing, but I wonder if you could go back and do it again, would you just stuff some islands in there and play that Zareth Sand, the Trickster that you opened?
Oh, probably.
Okay, fair enough. Good.
Just for fun.
Sure. Has anyone encountered this card in any of their games otherwise, like online?
Yes, but not doing the thing. My opponent.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my opponent just cast one, and then I immediately sent it on a Journey to the Unknown. By the way, Journey to the Unknown is great.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I had a black-white, sort of mostly life gain, but generally speaking, just sort of cleric-focused party deck that was obviously very different from the one at the pre-release. I didn't have the pre-release. I didn't have the legendary or even the uncommon. It was just sort of cards that do things. And yeah, it was fun. I think I ended up with, what can you go to? You can go to 7 wins. I think I ended up 5 wins with it. And yeah, it did some cool stuff. I mean, I already talked about the fun line of play with using Tazim Raptor to bounce your land spells. I did get the board wipe, which I never ended up casting because it's 8 mana.
Planar cleansing? Is that it? Kind of effect?
It's like that. I don't remember what it's called, but yeah, it is.
Undo Inversion? Yeah, it's planar cleansing. It's just destroy all non-land permanents for 2 more mana. Or it's a sweet pay 3 life planes, right? Oh no, it's the tapped one. Okay.
Yeah, which is awkward when you are playing 2 copies of Journey into the Unknown. And it's like, but if I kill the Journeys, then they get their creatures back.
Right.
Although I did find out a fun thing where my opponent plays this big scary creature and I top deck Journey into the Unknown and I go, haha, and I cast it and it just goes plonk onto the battlefield and my turn passes. And I'm like, wait, what? What just happened? I didn't get to pick one of their creatures. What's going on? So the creature that they'd played was, is it Ashaya or Ayasha?
Ashaya, I think.
Ashaya, the Awoken World?
Yeah,
whatever?
so Ashaya, Soul of the Wild. 2 green for a star, legendary creature elemental. Ashaya Soul of the Wild's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control, so it was a 9/9 at that time. Non-token creatures you control are forest lands in addition to their other types.
Oh no.
And Journey to the Unknown says non-land.
Oh no.
Poor Graham.
So I played it.
Sucks.
Yeah, so I played it, and Arena was like, "Yeah, you can play that. You know, you can't target anything, but you can play it." And I was just like, "Oh no!"
Yeah, the thing where you like play the card and your opponent's like resolves, and you put it on the field, and they're like, "Judge."
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what's going on?
As it happens, I won that game because I just I'd been beating them down, and I had a ton of creatures, and I was also able to play Null Priest of Oblivion, which I love. So it's a 2/1 for 1 and a black. Kathleen had this in her pre-release pool.
Oh yeah, that's right. This card's sweet.
It's got Menace and Lifelink. So like just that 2/1 Menace Lifelink for 2 mana. Great, I'm in. Sold. Awesome. But it has Kicker for 3 and a black. So for 4 black, you also get to just reanimate a creature. So it's actually, it's funny. It's the same price as Thwart the Grave.
Yeah, with no discount, right?
Yeah, but it just means that one of those creatures is a 2/1 lifelink menace, and the other creature is the best creature in your graveyard. So I was able to just basically go wide, and I had been bolstering my life total the whole time. So when my opponent was like, attack you with Ashaya for 9, I go, all right, well, take it. I go to 16, slam back with all my little guys, and they eat 1 or 2 of them, but it doesn't really matter because it takes them down the rest of the way. So that worked out all right.
Overall, though, I'm very pleased with this set so far. It feels a lot like Amonkhet Remastered to me.
Really?
Where all of the cards just kind of like fire,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, there are not great cards to find in your sealed pool or your draft pool. But for the most part, the card quality feels relatively high, and most of the cards feel like they want to work in the deck that they go in, right? You can wind up in problems where you will have cards that don't go in your deck, right?
Yeah.
I feel that is the way that the draft fails, is when you wind up in across a couple of different decks, not when you don't pick up the good cards for your deck.
That little mouse you had, the Canyon
Oh,
Jerboa.
yeah. Oh, it's just such a good boy.
Jerboa is great.
If that card was printed on Battle for Zendikar, it would have cost 5.
Yeah, I've played 2 decks with that card, and that little mouse is going to go the distance. I also had this. Oh, so brief aside, I've been misspeaking, and it's Journey to Oblivion is the exile card I was talking about. I think I was saying Journey to the Unknown, and it's Journey to Oblivion.
How dare you?
But I know. But I also had, in this life gain deck, I had Angel of Destiny, which is an absolutely goofy card. So 3 white for a 2/6, which is also just strange. Flying double strike. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you and that player each gain that much life. At the beginning of your end step, if you have at least 15 life more than your starting life total, each player that Angel of Destiny attacked this turn loses the game.
Huh.
So
yeah,
just by
it's
herself, yes, it's very weird. So just by herself, she hits them for a total of 4, and it does the damage. So like what happens is their life total doesn't change because it does the damage, but then they gain the life back. You just gain the life. And then you can't just play the angel if you already have more than 35 life past the turn and win, because you have to attack with it. And then the angel has to live through combat for the end step trigger to hit. But it's just like, what an unusual way to sort of make that work. And I got to do it, and let me tell you, it's fun, but it's just like, this is so odd.
Yeah.
I kind of like how you only have to attack with this angel, but it does have to be alive at the end step, right? It's not a delayed trigger ability. It's just a trigger that happens in the end step. So, every single one of those turns, getting yourself up to 35 life or whatever, you have to risk that angel. So that's kind of fun. It's sort of the equivalent of the like Felidar Sovereign from the originals. I think Felidar Sovereign was in both the last 2 Zendikar sets. So it's like there's been a like white mythic rares on Zendikar that give you an alternate win con based on life theme that this is continuing, but this one is like, it definitely, you have to read this card 2 or 3 times before it starts to sink in, right? Can we talk about Scale the Heights briefly? This was a card that Adam played a bunch, and I think maybe some other people had it in their deck at the PPR that I was just very impressed with every time it came up. And
Yeah.
I love Scale the Heights.
yeah.
Finally, a good green card.
Yeah, Cam was in our chat yesterday. We drafted it yesterday, and Cam was in our chat saying, "Oh, they've finally, after 20 years, 25 years or whatever, they've printed a good green common."
So 2 generic.
It's Cryptic Command.
Yeah, pretty much. 2 generic and 1 green, 3 mana for a sorcery that says, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature, so you can cast it if you don't have creatures. You gain 2 life. You may play an additional land this turn and draw a card. So, like, on the outset, it's just explore, but for 1 more mana, and for that 1 more mana, you get a +1/+1 counter and 2 life. But that turns out to be pretty great. Like, I think maybe this card really is going to shine limited. I don't know if it's going to end up being as good in constructed, because you'd rather just be doing 1 or 2 of those things better, rather than doing all of them. But like, the fact that you get to do all of them is so great for limited.
Yeah, like it works well with all of the green strategies in the set.
Yeah.
Right? It does counters, it'll do landfall, and if it doesn't do either of those things for you, then it draws you into something that hopefully will.
Also, like, a little bit of random life gain tends to be good in limited, because like, usually you're sort of trying to build to a position where you have an alpha strike, or you're just trying to keep their alpha strike in check, or maybe trick them into alpha striking and you don't die, and then you alpha strike back, So big fan of this card.
Yeah, like one of my sealed pools on Arena had some decent green, but I didn't wind up running green because I didn't have any Scale the Heights.
Huh.
Right? Like, it was marginal. I could have gone like green splash, but no Scale the Heights was like, is it worth it though?
It's gonna feel wrong.
Yeah.
I don't want to have to go through this.
Yeah.
Was there anything else we wanted to talk about specifically, or is it just
our initial impressions? I think I've shared mine already, sort of. I don't know. I was really happy that we got to have guests back on the PPR. That was great.
Yes.
It was fun getting to kind of hang out with Maria and Megan again.
Yeah, that was lots of fun.
But yeah, no, overall, it's only been out for a day, but I'm for Zendikar Reborn? Rising. Zendikar Rising.
No, so am I. I'm really into it, and I'm impressed, honestly, with how it feels so far. I think it feels really fun and exciting, and I think they've nailed the tone of the plane, and the cards are, to me anyway, they are powerful without being absolutely busted. And because there was some concern that this was a, quote, power down set. This was the set that was next to come out after play design or R&D in general realized that there had been too many powerful sets or something. I'm not entirely sure how this all sort of shook out time-wise, but people were like, oh, is this going to be the next Mercadian Masks? And no, it's not. This is sweet. It's been great for what little I have played of it, and I think it's awesome, and I'm glad that it doesn't seem initially to have any stonking mythic that's going to be a huge problem in standard, and it's actually just lots of fun to play. At least it's been fun to play in sealed. Only done 1 draft. Looking forward to doing more drafting.
Well, I feel like the implications in constructed of the double-faced land cards is like pretty intense, and if the set doesn't really leave you with any other impressions, it's like, well, you don't always have to play lands anymore, lol. Like, that's enough for one set to do, I think.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, I feel cutting land pools down to 10 actual cards that just say land on only one side.
Yeah, like, how much more do you want from a set?
Yeah.
I look forward to someone, probably not in standard, probably in one of the older formats, but I look forward to someone making a deck that's quite good with no actual lands, like modal DFCs, but no actual lands. I can't wait to see how that shakes out, because it's bound to happen.
Yeah, you can just Google modern Charbelcher right now if you want to, and you can see that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to feel like a sucker playing actual land cards from now on.
Just play the ones that have a different land on the back, then you're good.
Is this actually...
Oh yeah, it's already a thing.
Like, has this just been like everything a Charbelcher player has ever wanted to see?
Well, I think it just like changes the plan for Charbelcher, and it gives you an option to play Charbelcher in Modern, whereas usually you only got to play Charbelcher in Legacy, where you have access to like Land Grant and some more rituals and like Lotus Petal. But now you can play it in Modern, and like the plan is a little bit different, but still pretty cool deck. And yeah, no lands that are just lands.
Well, cool.
Yeah.
Well, then, I guess that will do it for this episode of Tap Tap Concede. So, a reminder that Tap Tap Concede is brought to you by Card Kingdom. Do check out cardkingdom.com/LRR for all of your card needs. They're shipping. They're all like back up to speed, doing their amazing work. So do check them out. And of course, thank you to you and your kind support of our Patreon at patreon.com/loadingreadyrun. So this has been myself, Graham, and Nelson.
Wash your hands.
And Cameron.
Sorry, what?
James was running the card reader. Shoutouts to Jordan Hatton for doing the audio editing on these now. And Heather does podcast admin for us. And we will talk to you next time on Tap Tap Concede. Bye, everybody.